Good day, everyone. Welcome to another edition of our mathematics presentation. Okay, the topics that we are going to discuss today: Mathematics 6, Quarter 2, Module 1, Relating Fraction and Ratio. Okay, the lesson that we are going to discuss is expressing one value as a fraction of another given the ratio and vice versa. Meaning this time we will be discussing what is the relationship between fraction to ratio and ratio to fraction. So we will discuss in this topic how these two are being related. Okay, let's take into the definition of the ratio. Ratio is the comparison of two or more person or things. So if we are comparing two person or things, then we are having a ratio. So in this particular example, we have 2 mangoes and 5 bananas. See, if we will be comparing them, we will have 2 mango is to 5 bananas. This is how we read the comparison. Now, if we are to make that into a ratio form, how do we write this one? So we have 2 is to 5. That is how to write in a ratio form. Okay, let's take another example. So in this illustration, there are 5 apples and 3 guyabanos. So the ratio of the number of apples to the number of guyabanos is 5 is to 3, because there are 5 apples and 3 guyabanos. The ratio will be 5 is to 3. Okay, let's take into the relationship of fractions and ratios. Fraction and ratios can be used to compare two quantities. So they can be used when we are comparing two quantities. So if we have 2 apple to 3 guavas, this is to be written as 2 is to 3 in a ratio form. So we have 2 apple is to 3 guavas. And when we write this in a fraction form, we can also have 2/3 or 2 over 3. 2 apple over 3 guavas. So when a ratio is given, one value can be expressed as a fraction of another. So if we have 3 is to 5, then we can write it 3/5 or 3 over 5 in a fraction form. So when a fraction is also given, the quantities can be expressed also as a ratio. So if we have 4 over 5 in the fraction form, it can be written also into a ratio form, 4 is to 5. Okay, let's take into the relationship of fractions and ratios. Fraction and ratios can be used to compare two quantities. So they can be used when we are comparing two quantities. So if we have 2 apple to 3 guavas, this is to be written as 2 is to 3 in a ratio form. So we have 2 apple is to 3 guavas. And when we write this in a fraction form, we can also have 2/3 or 2 over 3. 2 apple over 3 guavas. So when a ratio is given, one value can be expressed as a fraction of another. So if we have 3 is to 5, then we can write it 3/5 or 3 over 5 in a fraction form. So when a fraction is also given, the quantities can be expressed also as a ratio. So if we have 4 over 5 in the fraction form, it can be written also into a ratio form, 4 is to 5. Okay, let's take into the problem involving ratio. So here is the problem. Hasan had 15 pesos. Jolie had 30 pesos. And Arnel had 21 pesos. Okay, here is the question now. In its simplest form, the ratio of the total amount of money Hassan and Arnel had to the total amount of money of all the three had is blank is to blank. So we are going to determine the ratio. Okay, what ratio are we going to determine? Total amount of money of Hassan and Arnel. So what does it mean? We will add the total amount of money of Hassan and Arnel. How much would that be? Then we will have to compare that to the total amount of money all of the three had. Meaning, we are going to total the amount of all the three had. So we have what will be the total amount of the three? Hassan, Julie, and Arnel, to be compared to the total amount of Hassan and Arnel. That is what the problem is about. Okay, we will now simplify the problem and we will have to solve. We will have to perform what does the problem says so that we can have our ratio. Okay, so according to the problem, in its simplest form, the ratio of the total amount of money of Hassan and Arnel had to the total amount of money of all the three had. Okay, so the total amount of money Hassan and Arnel. So we will add Hassan's money and Arnel's money. Hassan had 15 and Arnel had 21. So 15 plus 21 will give us 36. That is for the total amount of Hassan and Arnel. So to be compared to the total amount of money of all the three. So what are their money? We have Hassan has 15, Julie has 30. So we have 45. Plus Arnel of 21, we have a total of 66. So when we write the ratio, since total amount of Hassan and Arnel's money is 36, and the total amount of their money is 66, then we will have a ratio of 36 is to 66. This is now the ratio comparison of Hassan and Arnel's money to the total amount of money of all the three. Okay, so here is the question now. What is the ratio in its simplest form? What do you mean by simplest form? This means that we are going to reduce the ratio in the simplest form, just like in our fraction, wherein we need to reduce the fraction to its lowest term. This time, we will be reducing the ratio to its simplest form, or equivalent in fraction in the lowest term. So let's perform now and let's have the example. Okay, since the problem says we will have the ratio in its simplest form, then we will have to reduce the ratio. How to reduce the ratio? The same as what we did in the fraction. You will have to find for the greatest common factor of 36 and 66, so that we will be able to use this in dividing the two quantities. So we will divide 36 and 66 by a number, what we call the greatest common factor, so that we will be able to find the simplest form of the ratio. When you say simplest form, it is the lowest term of the fraction in the fraction form. Okay, so let's have factors of 36 and 66. So we find out that 6 is the greatest common factors of both 36 and 66. So since 6 is the greatest common factor, we will divide 36 by 6, 66 by 6. so that you can find the simplest form of the ratio. So 36 divided by 6 will give us 6. 66 divided by 6 will give us 11. So 11 is a prime number, therefore we have now the simplest form of the ratio. So the ratio in the simplest form is 6 is to 11. So from 36 is to 66, making it into its simplest form, we have 6 is to 11. Okay, let's take it to the second question. Letter B. The ratio of the amount of money Julie had to the amount of money of Arnel had in its simplest form. So we will be having a ratio again of the amount of money Julie had to the amount of money Arnel had. So in its simplest form. So first, we are going to find how much the money of Arnel to be compared to the money of Julie. So we have amount of money of Julie. How much? Julie has 30. Then, how much is the amount of money of Arnel? So we have Arnel had 21. So let's take that and write that in a ratio form. So when we get into the ratio of money of Arnel and Julie, Julie has 30 and Arnel had 21. So the ratio is 30 is to 21. But the question is, we will do it in its simplest form. Therefore, this is not yet the final answer because it's just the ratio of the money of Arnel and Julie. Julie has 30, Arnel has 21. So, we will have to make that into its simplest form. So, the ratio of amount of money of Julie had to the amount of money of Arnel had in its simplest form. So, if we have 30 is to 21, we will have to divide the quantities into by its greatest common factor, which is 3. 30 divided by 3, we will get 10. 21 divided by 3, we will get 7. So that this will now become the simplest form of the ratio. So from 30 is to 21, it will now become 10 is to 7 by reducing the ratio going into its simplest form. How do we reduce the ratio? We find the greatest common factor of 30 and 21. So that we have 10. Okay, question letter C. The amount of money Hassan had is what fraction of the amount of money Arnel had? Meaning we will present it in a fractional form. Letter D. The amount of money Julie had is what part of the total amount they have. So again, letter D again, we will have to present their corresponding amount in a fractional form. Okay, the amount of money Hassan had is 15 and the amount of money Arnel had is 21. So we will have a fractional presentation of 15 over 21. Now in letter D, the amount of money Julie had is 30, while the total amount of money they all have is 66. Therefore, the fractional form is 30 over 66. So that when you are to present a fraction, you have to see to it that it is presented in the lowest term. So we will have to reduce this fraction to its lowest term. Okay, reducing our answers to the lowest term, we have letter C. The amount of money Hassan had is 5 over 7 or 5/7 of the total amount of money Arnel had. For letter D, the amount of money Julie had is 6 over 11 or 6/11 of the total amount of money they all have. Okay, so after changing our fraction to its lowest term, so we will now have for letter C, the amount of money Hassan had is 5/7 of the amount of money Arnel had. For letter D, the amount of money Julie had is 6/11 of the total amount of money they all have. So this is now how we present a problem involving ratio and fraction. Okay, this is all for today's video. For all my subscribers and to those who are new to my channel, thank you for watching. Don't forget to share, like, and subscribe my channel so that you will be notified for the next videos that I will be uploading. Once again, thank you and God bless. Is to 7.